What's a dead giveaway that someone has been raised in a strict household? Personally, I'm afraid to help with any household chores when I'm at someone else's house, like doing the dishes after dinner, because I might do them wrong and then the host would be upset with me. Anything which I need to do, whether it's schoolwork, work for my job, or something that needs doing around the house, I'll try to do when no one is around or where no one can see. I know the person will like the finished product, but if they see me working on it they might get upset that I'm not doing it the right way. They apologize excessively, they're always the first person to leave when hanging out, and their parents always chaperoned at school functions in high school. Fear of authoritative voices and people. I know people who are genuinely anxious, not because of abuse, but fear of disappointing others. Edit, wow, I'm kinda worried about you guys. Fear of being rejected once others know your true bad nature, always feeling like you are not good enough. If your self-worth growing up is entirely dependent on your ability to conform to a particular set of rules and live up to an unrealistic or unhealthy standard, it is very easy to feel like you are fundamentally a bad person when you no longer follow those rules. It thus is difficult to A. Develop your own person and feel confident in your own skin, and B. Show your honest self to other people when you feel like that self is fundamentally bad and expect rejection. Edit, pronouns. A lot of people here are saying things like anxiety and sheepishness, but I've found a lot of people from strict households just become better liars, and often are incredibly defiant. If they feel you're telling them to do something they will fight it tooth and nail. My sister, at 27, will refuse to do the simplest of things if I don't ask politely. Edit. People are saying I should always ask politely. This isn't a stranger, this is a person I've known my entire life and who likes to burp in my face to gross me out. We've gone past being polite to each other. They are genuinely in shock and awe when they witness normal/affectionate displays of parenting. Edit, for everyone commenting that strict and abusive/warm/affectionate are different, I get it. I am not talking about abusive parents, but definitely not the strict yet warm type that just expects you get good grades, don't stay out past your curfew, do all of your chores, and don't talk back. That is not what I consider strict. I had this a while ago. I, 27 meters, was on a hunting trip with two older buddies, in their 50s. One just talked about how he was proud of his son for joining a sports club, and it reminded me that my parents never told me they were proud of anything I did and constantly played down every achievement with a casual "well, you are gifted so it is easy for you." I had to pull my hat down so they couldn't see me cry silently walking behind them. They don't laugh at their mistakes, or they got teased for being sensitive to criticism, so now they're quick to point out their flaws all the time before anyone else can, and then they laugh it up, so everyone knows they have a sense of humor. My friends used to make fun of me for getting up at 8 AM on Saturday to deep clean my apartment. I hadn't lived with my folks for about 5 years, but to this day, Saturday morning is time for chores, and the consequences for missing chores is just something I cannot comprehend. I've been told multiple times that I'm the cleanest bachelor that anyone has ever met. Can you come over to my place? Say Saturday around 8 AM. They can't yell, because loudness has been frightened out of them from a very young age. Took a drama class with one girl and we all had to practice yelling. She couldn't do it, like physically couldn't do it, and broke down in tears trying. The teacher just took her aside and said, "Wow, honey, someone did this to you, do you know that?" Asking for permission to do just about everything. Lack of ability as an adult to make decisions because they were never allowed to make any. Being jumpy. People always laugh when I jump as they say something loudly and unexpectedly, but the origins of that aren't really that funny. I come from a strict household and I am very sneaky and I have become very good at making up white lies, but I am also constantly apologizing for everything and I am very jumpy. Edit: I don't lie much anymore, but I used to lie to help my case if I didn't do what I was told, i.e., if I were told to do my laundry and I hadn't yet, I would say I was cleaning my room / doing my homework, something that would make them happy. I'm actually so mad at how good I've become at lying. I value honesty and all of that sort of stuff, but lying just comes so easily. I've also got the reputation of a trustworthy guy, and I've been told I have an honest face. I feel like such a goddamn fraud sometimes. When she uses her telekinetic powers to murder everyone at her prom. This thread is making me tear up. So many realizations are hitting me about my upbringing, why I am who I am and why I act certain ways. Most of the time it's when I meet people who weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons or Family Guy growing up. Edit: wow, a lot of really great stories in the responses. Thanks for the comments, didn't think that so many people could associate with this kind of thing. I had the usual no Simpsons or South Park thing too. My favorite, however, is telling people that I also wasn't allowed to watch Starbright, Rugrats, Doug, etc. My mom got this stupid Christian magazine that had a reviewer who would write about what cartoons or movies were safe for kids to watch. I asked my mom about those shows when I was older. Oh, I still watched them, just with the remote nearby, and she told me it was because of the bad characters in the show. The writer said they could be a bad influence on kids. My mom was a silly paranoid parent. Amazing mom, but took everything as Satan's gonna spoil my child. Years later, talking to her, I said, "You do realize those characters were always shown in a bad light, would get what was coming to them, or lose to the good guy. Right?" Her response: "Well, yeah, now I get that." At least she learned. If they come to your house and ask for a drink, they won't accept grab something from the fridge as an option. One does not simply open another's fridge. They're prudish at first, but when they're drunk they're asking you to sit on their face. On the flip side, I was raised in a somewhat strict religious household and sometimes see normal, secular family behavior as wildly permissive. You were allowed to go anywhere alone with your girlfriend when you were a teenager? Wow. What do you mean you just decided you didn't want to go to church when you were 16? Your parents didn't force you to go? You could pick out all your own clothes? And your mom let you dye your hair? They are rowdy as fuck in university, once they're on their own. Lots of drug use, including alcohol, and sleeping around. Not that that is a bad thing, they are just experimenting a bit later than most people. It is a bad thing because they usually go overboard without understanding the consequences. People who grow up in strict households only understand consequences in terms of what their parents will do to them, not what their now independent self is capable of doing to itself. They are questioning their decisions often. Mostly to themselves. I don't know a lot of TV shows and actors from when I was growing up. I basically lived under a rock. Currently in a strict household, I'm not allowed to do that, will get in trouble. I can't go because of my parents. You're allowed to do that? Sorry, I got grounded, that's too late, I have to be back for curfew. Formerly from a strict household. Oh. I wasn't allowed to do that, I never tried that before. About something very common, I don't know, that very famous actor, never heard of it, I never stayed up that late. They cringe every time I lift up the back of my hand. To be fair, I do this and my parents are cool, I'm just paranoid. Perhaps immediate obedience in regards to authority figures. This excludes questioning and or outwardly defying authority from time to time, and feeling anxious when visiting a friend's home or the home of a stranger where you don't already know the rules and whatnot. I know for me personally, mostly as a child, I was amazed that so many of my friends were raised in households with looser rules than the one in which I was raised. For instance, many of my childhood friends walked around the house with their shoes on, which I could not believe, and when I would offer to help with the after-supper dishes as I was taught, the parents would smile and shake their heads and tell me that it wasn't necessary and that I could go play. Very antisocial. Once walked into my friend's dorm, and while I was waiting for him to come, I saw his roommate and made small talk. The guy started backing off and apologizing to me like it was my dorm. Very weird. Really not wanting to disappoint others. I get so nervous I'm doing something wrong all the time. Also, if your parents are immigrants, you tend to relate to other people with immigrant parents because they all want to have doctors, lawyers, and such as children. African parents, man. Mine weren't even the worst. They're great, to be honest, especially compared to my friends. They normally show a bit more respect to not offend anyone. Usually more worried about what other people may think. Wincing entirely too much while reading these posts. One time someone told me to stop saying sorry so much, and my response was I'm sorry. Being really uptight at other people's houses. Not disrupting or moving anything even if it means not having a place to sit. Worrying about where to place things like jacket or a glass. Not asking for anything. Making sure your friend asked and double-checked with their parent that it was okay for them to have you over. Grades. Even if it's high, it's not good enough. They really worry about curfews. Never expresses emotion, bottles them up. I would know, I am one of those kids. They complain about getting an A. There was this one kid who usually got A for maths. He raged when he got an A. Shit, that was me. I remember coming home once with a 19.5 on 20 grade in math. My dad scolded me because I didn't get 20 out of 20. Low self-esteem. Constantly concerned with how others perceive you. Like more than the normal amount. Hard to quantify, constant apologies, avoids confrontation to the point where they may lie. Your clock? What clock? Oh, that one? Wasn't me? You didn't see me do that, or actively seeks the confrontation to get it over with. I broke your clock, so sorry man. I'll pay you back as soon as blah blah blah. There's no middle ground, just an extreme. A couple friends have pointed out that I became a fairly good liar after my mom left and my dad suddenly decided he was going to be overly strict. I had to cover for my sister to our last landlord, and our friend that lived with us was absolutely baffled by the ease with which I came up with lies and delivered them to his face. I hate lying and I do avoid it as much as possible. But I'm terrified of confrontation, especially with older men, as my dad was terrifying when he was angry, so if I can get around it with a lie and no one gets hurt, I may choose to. I still get nervous whenever I watch TV at my parents' house. As a teenager, I had stopped watching TV altogether for fear of my dad walking in the room and asking, "What is this? And is it about God? Or I don't like this, this isn't good, turn it off." Basically, any TV show post 1970 was off limits. If they're sneaky. 3 things from my own childhood that I'm constantly working on. Obedience, everything will be done, and done perfectly. Ask them to jump and they won't question how high, they will just jump as hard and as high as they can and pray that it is to your liking. Reserved, they are quiet. Unless they are being spoken to, they will not speak. Unless they were specifically invited, they won't show up to a party or group. Explosive anger, it takes a lot to make them show their anger, but when they do, it is highly explosive and violent, generally towards objects. This is learned from the parent. Generally, they are extremely adept at lying. They'll have no tells and the cover story will always be airtight. People from strict households typically want to avoid conflict at all costs and have a boatload of experience doing so. Are consummate liars at the drop of the hat if they sense they might be in trouble. Comes from kids with strict parents getting really good at planning out complex stories and lies to cover their tracks when they decide to stray outside of the strict household rules. Edited because it isn't a word but kids is. Can I go to the bathroom? What the fuck do you think this is? Prison? Ha ha, it's down the hall to the left. Generally, I've noticed that people who have strict parents didn't have a typical childhood that most people seem to have. What this means is they won't have seen most films or TV shows or heard music that most people have listened to / seen. Like popular stuff like The Lion King or The Simpsons, or pretty much most Disney movies that any kid would be expected to have seen. There's more of a restriction on the child to do this kind of stuff, and to go outside and play, or do something that doesn't involve the TV. For girls from strict households, they normally tend to be very good at cooking / cleaning or other things that girls are supposed to be good at. I wasn't allowed to watch MTV growing up. Well, I didn't allow myself to watch MTV growing up. After they stopped playing music. Lack of confidence. Strict parents damage a child's concept of self-worth and confidence. Even when these children grow up, they depend on others around them for opinion, and can't make decisions on their own. I am one of these people. I found it's having a total disconnect from others, or understanding of a lot of basic things. Hearing friends talk about their childhoods now, I find it extremely odd. They did so much together as families. They got along with their siblings, went on many trips, got to do what they want, get what they want. It makes me nervous when talking to people cause they ask about my childhood, and when I explain it I see nothing wrong, but they get this look on their face, like they're at a funeral or something. It's just harder making connections to people cause you second guess yourself a lot, and are constantly afraid of disappointing others. You pull your belt off quickly and the sound it makes causes a person to freeze in a moment of terror. Subtly fucking the system. They can't do it openly because parents will yell, so it's the small things. Being passive-aggressive, smart talking, and backing off if things threaten to get more serious. Liked what you saw? Hit like, subscribe and the bell icon for more crazy Reddit content.